podcast. I'm your host, Zach Schwartz, and joining me today is the guest who has the best hair we've ever had on this podcast, easily. He is a Dallas Mavericks fan. I've never had one in my life, so it's a very interesting, different take there with Luka Doncic, his hero, his man. And we're going to talk about the NBA trade deadline. And of course, you can actually see my face. So if you're listening from like Texas and have never seen my face before, this is what it looks like. So we're going to start posting these on YouTube now. So I'm going to try to. This is our first test run. So when I get to work later this weekend, this might be a complete disaster. So who knows? But all of that is to say, it's an NBA trade deadline podcast. After a couple games to see how the new pieces fit in with Sean Hinkle. Sean, how you doing?
Well, not too bad. Thank you for having me on. And it is an honor to be dubbed the best hair on the podcast, considering that there's not video from the prior podcast. I don't actually know what competition I'm up against, but you know what? I'll take that victory no matter what. And yes, I am a Dallas Mavericks fan. I apologize for anybody that isn't. We lost Dirk and immediately gained Luka Doncic. I don't know why you wouldn't be just heading this way. It's pretty wonderful. There was a little grappling with the fact that I think Luka Doncic might be younger than me, and that felt weird. It still feels weird, but I've gotten over it.
I didn't even think about that. I think my first athlete like that was Tua, our freshman year, when he threw that pass to have Alabama win the national title, and I was like, wait, he's a freshman, and I'm a freshman. This isn't right.
You start doing it. I forget who I was listening to the other day. Might have been Colin Sexton. They're like, you graduated high school in 2017. I was like, hold up a second. I graduated high school in 2017. That's not right.
Oh my goodness. That's it's a shocking realization, and I've always looked up to players. Now it's like actually the players are younger than you, and like Joe Burrow's around your age and all this stuff. It's so weird. So weird. Your Mavericks made a small trade, I guess, if we want to start there, just to get it out of the way.
Why don't we start there? I think that's a great idea. We got JJ Redick and Nicolo Melli. JJ Redick is currently rehabbing an injury, and actually I just listened to JJ Redick's own podcast where he flamed the Pelicans front office, which was super fun. I just got a good chuckle out of that. I don't have anything against the Pelicans. But I don't know. I thought it was a really good little pickup for the Mavericks. I was hearing whispers that JJ was going to get bought out, and I was like, well, does he really have to? I feel like, the Pelicans have no idea what they're doing at this point, trying to put together a lineup, but I feel like a ton of teams could use JJ, so it made sense that he got traded. And I don't know, we gave up a box of scraps for it, so I'm pretty happy overall.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised with, because Redick is still a really valuable, three-point shooter, and that's exactly what Dallas needs, and spreading out the floor and stuff like that. They really do need another three-point shooter. So to give Luka space, and I think it's a really good pickup, like you said, for literally nothing. I mean, James Johnson a second, and a guy I never heard of.
How about Nicolo Melli?
Yeah, that too.
Like, he's actually like a semi-useful rotation player probably for the Mavericks, and I just feel like this was like a secondhand thought trade. Like I don't understand why the Pelicans do this. I guess just not to buy him out. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's true. And to your point about the Pelicans, Zion's being awesome over there. That's good for Zion. You mentioned they can't find a lineup. You do know who their coach is, right?
I do know who their coach is.
So
Stan the Man Van Gundy.
The Pistons suck now, which doesn't matter. But we're definitely not talking about that at all, ever. But
we can do 15 minutes on it.
As Sal knows, as frequent podcast guest, Salvador Corona, I would complain about Stan Van Gundy endlessly and how his president, or he was GM, no, he was president and coach at the same time. It was a disaster for the Pistons. It's terrible. And the Pelicans hired him, and I don't know who exactly, and like I'm not trying to pretend I'm a mainstream medium guy, but there's a lot of people who were like, oh, this is going to work. He's going to be able to find the stuff around Zion like he did with Dwight Howard. I was like, no, this is going to be a disaster. Stan Van's a terrible coach. Jeff Van Gundy's a terrible coach. Get the Van Gundys out. I just need to get them out and be done. They're ruining Zion. This Pelicans team should be competing for the postseason, and I can pull up the standings here to see exactly where they're at. I haven't looked at them in a couple days, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I see Zion averaging 25 a game, and he's doing they're under 500, right above Oklahoma City. It's a disaster. Like, goodness. I mean, they won't, but they should fire him after this year.
They won't. And I'm gonna bet. I'm not defending Stan Van Gundy. I don't want to make it out to that, but I feel like the roast of Stan Van Gundy should be tempered. And I understand from your perspective as a Pistons fan, maybe that's not the way you want to go, but I feel like the pieces that they gave, he is no longer the GM there. And they signed Steven Adams to an extension when they traded for him. I believe they picked up, quite frankly, this is not necessary. I think Brandon Ingram was a really good player, but I think in some days he kind of feels like maybe he's the man. Maybe Stan whispered in his ear that he was the guy, and he really believed that for a few fourth quarters there that looked really ugly. Lately, they've been getting Zion the ball more, which makes a lot more sense. But I feel like the personnel there is a little shaky, and honestly, the personnel aside from like 4 guys probably doesn't matter that much. So maybe if Stan gets along well with Zion, if he can turn them into like a competent defensive outfit, which has not happened yet. So that's a fair criticism, but maybe that personnel really, really changes here in the next year or so, because right now the team that they have around it doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's true. And that Steven Adams thing was bad, like in the moment. I remember, I'm trying to look at the details right now. That was a good point you bring up, because that was bad. 2 for 35. Yikes. That's...
It's not even like I'm saying, like, it's not like Steven Adams is garbage. It's just like, he doesn't make sense next to Zion. It's period. Like, and I don't know. I don't think that took a investigative reporter to figure that out prior to that contract extension.
Literally, yeah. Everyone knew that. He also, I can't believe he's under 30 still. And that Adams, I always talk about that. Whenever he gets brought up, I'm like, it's ridiculous. I wonder what he looked like when he was in high school.
There are some people you just assume are 35 at all times, regardless of their actual age.
Yeah, the ID never gets checked. Just doesn't get checked, even though it says Publix ID is over 50 or under 50 or whatever, or 45, I think it is.
Yeah, he was like 24. Like, absolutely no one would ID him.
Speaking of Publix, this is a grade A transition I'm already calling out. Speaking of Publix, the 2 Florida NBA teams made really big moves.
Wow. That was I just want to admire your podcasting skills here. I didn't know the high level that we were operating at.
I think it would have been more high level if I didn't call it out before I even said the transition and start laughing.
That's okay. That's okay. We're easing into this.
Would you like to start with Miami's win now moves, and they desperately need them, or Orlando's? And I don't even think blowing up covers it. Like, just a full on like global destruction of their roster, I think this was, in one day, literally in 3 hours, just blew everything up, and now they're the worst team in the NBA. Which one would you like to start with?
Let's start with the Heat. I have words for both, but I think the Heat is probably a little bit of a quicker topic, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But I just feel like the Heat's, like, there was just 100% approval rating immediately. It was like, yes, this makes sense. You did not pay too much for this. If anything, you paid incredibly little, and you made your team both better in the short term and potentially a lot better in the long term.
Yeah. So they got Ariza. I don't know how to say his name, but Bejikada from the Kings.
Wow, that was not even an attempt. Bielitsa, I believe.
There we go. Okay, there we go. And then the big one on the cap was Victor Oladipo coming over from the Rockets, and they shipped out Myers Leonard. I'm going to save comment about that one. Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Mo Harkless, a 2027 second round pick, and then I forgot with who, with the 2022 swap, possibly. So they had 3 really quality rotation players for a team that, I mean, a lot of this is probably bubble inflicted, right? Even the Lakers are struggling a little bit, just how quick the seasons, how small the time in between the seasons was. But I mean, 3 valuable rotation pieces for this team, who's already a pretty deep team. I think, in an East where, you're competing against Brooklyn and Philadelphia. But just to actually just get reinforcements for just the playoff run and see what happens. Because, I mean, last year they knocked out top quality talent. So I guess they're kind of running it back with that strategy.
No one, I cannot imagine, if you're a fan of one of those top East teams, that you want to see any injured Miami in the playoffs. And they came out this, like, out of the gate struggling, like you were talking about, and some of it was injury, some of it was definitely like bubble fatigue. I pulled up standings here. I was laughing at myself because I was like, they've been doing so well recently. I pulled it up. They're exactly 500. But in the East, you know what exactly 500 nets you? The freaking 5 seed. So they're there. They're probably going to, if I had to wager, they're going to take out the Hornets from the current 4 seed, which is disorienting to look at. But I think just, like I said, they improved everything in the short term. Trevor Ariza is just like, speaking of people that we thought were 35 when they were 25, and he's actually probably 35 now. I also saw something coming across the ticker when he got traded that he was the most traded player in like modern NBA history, which I was like, that's such a weird title to have, but fair enough. He can just help in some like spot minutes as like poor man's Andre Iguodala, I guess. And then Bielitsa is just more shooting off the bench, and Oladipo raises their ceiling, just point blank, period. And they needed a little something because even though they've been improved recently, that offense gets stagnant if one person's out pretty quickly. If Dragic is out for 2 games, they score like 80 points. So just having that extra body there, somebody else who can create and contribute, I think makes them a little better. And probably, easily, if they weren't already the 4th best team in the East, I would consider them that. And if you wanted to make an argument over one of those 3 teams, probably Milwaukee, I'd consider it.
Right, and the Hornets thing too. Now they don't have LaMelo, so they're going to drop off at somewhat. But you see the Celtics at the 8 seed, which is weird in itself. But 2 games under 500, so who knows how far they'll fall. But also like the Heat this year, they were around the 9-10 seed for most of the season. So they were really struggling. So I think credit to them for getting back up to a decent place, in the 5th seed. And then now with reinforcements coming, hopefully gearing up for a long playoff run again for those Miami Heat fans. And I think the big key too is like not giving out Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero as well, because there were a lot of deals with those type of rumors, for bigger players, maybe Lowry, or even, I think that's probably what Houston started with Oladipo. And not giving up those key rotation players as well is a big thing. One last thing on Oladipo. The Rockets messed up the James Harden trade, because remember, for people that didn't forget, I don't know if I did a James Harden thing. I may not have on this podcast. James Harden was traded for a boatload of picks, and the centerpiece of it back, I believe, from Brooklyn was Karis LeVert, if I'm correct on that. And the Rockets almost immediately, essentially, flipped LeVert for Oladipo in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And now Oladipo was traded for Avery Bradley, Olynyk, and that 2022 pick swap. And it's just like, so basically the centerpiece of that deal, if you translate LeVert to Oladipo, is now Avery Bradley, Kello Olynyk, and a 2022 pick swap, which Olynyk might get bought out. So it's just like, oh my God, like except for all the picks in Houston, which remember half the Houston picks are getting sent out anyway to OKC in the Russell Westbrook trade. Like it's a disaster for Houston fans, and they lost what? They lost some ridiculous amount of games in a row. I forgot the number, but
it was at least 20. It was either 20 or 21.
I know the Detroit team is bleak. Like I'm not trying to say this, but at least we control our own destiny in the future. Poor Houston fans. You might not feel bad at being a Dallas fan, but I don't know. I don't know how the Texas rivalries work.
Honestly, I don't know how that works either, because I feel like we haven't like actually butted heads, and this like whole Harden era has been weird. But no, I think the GM came out and tried to defend himself because it was after this. Everyone was like, "Wait, are you kidding? You swap for Oladipo, saying, oh, maybe we can keep him, or maybe we can flip him for something better, whatever." And yeah, you end up with quite frankly, a heap of garbage, like maybe like 2 like half rotation players and a 2nd round pick. And Karis LeVert looks, after thank goodness they found that tumor on him and he was out for a little while, but he looks back to himself for the most part, really talented player under control for another 2 years, I believe. And then you swap for Oladipo, who was like clearly denied an extension from them very publicly, and then was clearly telling them like, hey, I'm going to be in Miami anyway, so feel free to go get some 2nd round picks for me. And that's what they ended up having to do. And yeah, if I was a Rocket fan, I'd be miserable, because by all accounts, you could have had Ben Simmons. And I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're blowing it up. I don't care if you're retooling. I don't care. You're trading James Harden. You're trading one of the best 4 to 5 players in the league, and you can get back an all NBA talent. I don't care that you have John Wall on your team. Run them both out there. Just run in transition. Just absolutely just run 1,000 miles an hour. Like have John Wall just run the second unit entirely, stagger the minutes, whatever you have to do. But if you have the option to get an actual legitimate piece under contract for like 4 or 5 years, it made no sense at the time, and it makes significantly less sense now.
The NBA and like NBA GMs, NBA fans are so obsessed with picks. I've never seen a league more obsessed with draft picks than actual proven commodity players. Like, draft picks are nice. I mean, even in the NFL especially too, it's like, okay, let's get a third rounder, and like that guy becomes a starter, and we do this. Like, there's a much more translatable action there. And the NBA, like, half of the first round picks suck every year. They just suck. Like, and like even like someone like Marvin Bagley, for instance, so I was really high on coming into the draft for the Kings. Number 2 pick, nothing. Like Mo Bamba, you think about that. Like, there's just so many especially top 10 picks that just suck. And so when people prioritize that over somebody like Ben Simmons, like, I mean, you just got even LeVert. Like, I really like LeVert. I think he's really solid and player, maybe the perfect number 3 option, in a playoff game. So I'm just like, it just breaks my brain that the Ben Simmons offer was there, and it was there. Like, you and I are not NBA reporters. We plug into the NBA in the sense that all the other reporters we listen to were very active with that. So it's not a secret that Ben Simmons was on the table, and they were like, no, and that's just poor Houston. Houston.
Well, the owner stepped in, and there's been speculation that not getting Ben Simmons was just a pettiness of trying not to trade him to Daryl Morey. Try not to trade James Harden to Daryl Morey. And, the owner, Tillman Fertitta, or whoever he is, came in, and, he has his book out there, what is it, like, Shut Up and Listen, which I'm sure, is just really popular, probably a bestseller, I would imagine, a New York Times bestseller, who maybe he had to buy himself 100,000 copies. But, yeah, it seems like an absolute delight to be there. And I agree with you, the focus on picks, but also the simultaneous like devaluing of picks, where a team will just be like, yeah, I'll give you 4 first-round picks for Drew Holiday, and it's like, wait, when did this happen? But at the same time, it's like, I don't blame you, because like if everything goes well and you sign Giannis immediately after that, those picks are going to be in the 20s at the highest for the next 5 years. And so I don't know, and there's a lot of smart GMs and smart teams. Like OKC, I really like that spot right now. They have Shea, they have some other nice players, and then they have this absolute absurdity amount of picks. Like they own like God knows how many middle schoolers right now that they just have the draft rights to. But clearly, I trust them to have some type of plan to turn those into actual actionable assets and players and things that make sense. But I don't know. I'm really fascinated to see that it's something that comes out like Houston, and they're not the only one who seems to have like elected to just go that direction with there's no obvious like path there at all. And it's just like, I know I've heard some people talking about like, oh, that GM maybe it's just GMs playing for time. Maybe it is. Like, that's the one that I struggle to say one of these 30 high functioning people in that incredibly competitive industry would just essentially be kicking the ball down the road to try to keep their job. I imagine they're all trying to do their best, but that one is a head scratcher.
Yeah, you just wonder with some of the people, especially if it's just like, oh, they got on the right side of the owner or something like that. Especially like you look at the Houston Texans, for instance. I know we're changing sports, but I mean, like, you think like they're
poor Houston. Man.
Oh, that's right.
Astros.
Man, Houston's getting dunked on. I thought I had the worst. I mean, that's what I was telling.
That went bad in like a span of no time at all. Like the Astros won a World Series. The Texans looked like they had like a really solid team, and they're in the playoffs for a while. The Rockets had James Harden. They were competing, and then it's just like it was like a blimp that just someone lit on fire in the middle of the sky.
Yeah, well, at least they have their college basketball team, playing on Saturday. This is going to come out. I'm going to post this later today. And, I mean, let's just hope they beat Baylor. So, for their sake, at least. But they probably won't, because it's Baylor.
I'm sure that'll be a lot of condolences to the people of Houston.
The Rockets owner's book, by the way, is Shut Up and Listen with an exclamation point. Hard business, true style, help you succeed. So, basically, the one that's going to be in, like, half-price books for, like, $3 in 10 years. That's what that sounds like. Like, literally, that title is
10 years, 10 weeks, 10 months, possibly. I mean, I'd like to, maybe we can get a follow-up on that. I'll set like an alert or something to have me check the price of that book here in like 10 months.
Okay, that's true. So Houston also traded with Milwaukee. I mean, I don't think we had to spend that much time on this deal. PJ Tucker wanted out, obviously, because he was tired of Houston, because who wouldn't it be? They get back DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, so double DJ. And then a 2023 first-round pick. So then Milwaukee also gets a 2022 first-round pick back, and then they also get, I can't say these names, another role player. I also just can't read my handwriting. Karukas? I don't, like, just as a swingman, I believe, but another defender there for Milwaukee who can help maybe corral, someone like a Ben Simmons or something like that in the postseason going up against the Nets and stuff like that, and the Sixers as well. So Milwaukee, once again, just pushing its chips further into the table because what else do they have to do? In East right now, that's really a three-team East. In the past we've talked about Philadelphia, Brooklyn, obviously, especially Philadelphia with Embiid having an MVP year and then going down, so who knows? And then Brooklyn, obviously, with their talent. And, Boston should be there. Boston made a small move getting Mo Wagner for Daniel Tice, but, they're in the 8th seed right now. So I thought personally coming into the year would be a 4-team East, or maybe 5, including Miami, is really now down to 3.5. I'll give Miami the half there with their new trades. So it's going to be interesting in the East, at least in the semifinals and going onward.
Yeah, for sure. And Boston, I feel pretty comfortable saying I don't care about past the first round of playoffs. I don't consider Boston really much of anything. I watched them play the Mavericks last night, and obviously that's not everything I'm basing it off of, but there was a lot of Mo Wagner. There was a considerable amount of Mo Wagner, and not that he's not a good rotation player, but I don't think there should be that much Mo Wagner on anybody's television at any one time.
I love Mo Wagner. I have a lot of happy memories to give to the Wagners. Franz Wagner, currently Michigan player, who you may have last seen was airballing a 3 to beat UCLA in the Elite 8, but that's okay. He's a good guy. But I agree with you. Him going to Michigan and then leaving Michigan, you never thought he'd really be more than an 8th man on the team. So it's really interesting that he's getting a ton of time in Boston and stuff like that. And I appreciate that's a real NBA fan right there by saying Wagner. I have so many people like, this Franz Wagner guy's pretty good. I'm like, he's from Germany. Come on.
You need to talk to some different people. I don't know what to tell you.
Need more NBA fans in my life. Boston, though, I'm never going to feel bad for Boston fans. Just because of all the success they've had. But man, if my team had Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and I was 8th and frankly a dog shit conference, the 4th seed is led by LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward's 3 injury in Gordon Hayward, I would be irate. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know what it is, because there's been rumors now with Stevens possibly going back to college. So there's some rumors circling. I don't know what's up with that team, but Jason Tatum's a legitimate top 10 talent, and Jaylen Brown has really flashed real talent. So I'm just like, I don't know. They're another one too, where you mentioned OKC and stuff like that. These different picks, and even New Orleans is going to have a ton of picks soon. Where Boston shows how wrong it can go, because they used to have all these picks, right? And then they moved on Kyrie. That didn't work out. They moved on Kemba. Didn't work out. Missed Anthony Davis. Missed Paul George. And it's just oh my God. They were set up to be the team of the future after that. Those Brooklyn picks started coming through when Brooklyn was really bad. And now there's... Tatum's a great player, obviously, and so is Jaylen Brown. But it's that's the 4th best team in the East. That's really disappointing.
They got a lot of shots from that haul that they had, and it's almost commendable, transitioning from the Pierce era and then having that many shots, and they hit multiple of them. They hit Tatum, they hit Brown, they hit Marcus Smart, who's really, really valuable player, and a few other things that they've had that I think are valuable. But then it just shows you how fragile all of this can be when the Gordon Hayward signing, probably not a bad idea. Look at what he's doing in Charlotte right now, but the moment he gets there, he fractures his leg, and it just from the moment he got there, it was as if he had walked under a ladder, thrown salt over the wrong shoulder, and a black cat had spit in his face. And he leaves, and he looks back to himself immediately. And you spend a ton of money on Kemba. You can't. I can't blame them for not being able to figure out Kyrie. That's fair. I can't blame you on that one. But the Kemba thing, immediately, pretty much a year in, doesn't look too good. And it's really, you would think you hit on a pick like that. There are teams that would absolutely, your team, good example, that would murder to hit on a pick in the way that they have twice at this point. But that's not all. And there's a lot of different moves around the fringe that really, really matter. And I think that's good context for, some of these other trades where it's it really does matter, the other people that are around superstars. It's not just having a couple of stars. Look in Washington, look at the Celtics, look at some of these teams, having the right people around them and the right system to make sense. Because you can get in the system with Boston. I don't think Brad Stevens is a bad coach, but what's going on there doesn't make a lot of sense right now.
There's probably an alternate universe where Gordon Hayward doesn't get hurt 5 minutes into his Boston debut, and Boston has a couple more rings. Honestly, if you really think about it,
they were rolling. They were absolutely. I remember watching that game live. It was the season opener or whatever against the Cavs, and that was just brutal to watch. And who knows? Who knows? I can't speak to it. It's for so long you didn't even just imagine anybody beating LeBron in the East in the postseason. I don't know if I can. I don't even know if I can wrap my brain around that concept. But that team was absolutely rolling, and then ended up rolling without Kyrie and Gordon. So who knows? I mean, you're right. I think they certainly had a couple of shots at the apple, and people talking about championship windows. I don't think it's like, let's not get doom and gloom. Like I said, they have two players that other teams would give an arm and a leg for. And I think they can retool and figure it out here in the next few years. But it feels like this current window, these last 4+ years or so, it's kind of changing, kind of closing on them. And Kemba, I don't know what they're going to do, turn that around. But I don't think that this current iteration of the Boston team is really competing.
They need to get Kemba new legs. I think that's what they need. Yeah, get some of his pep back.
So where do they head to? Do they head to Germany for like the various knee transfusion surgeries that people have? I imagine those go relatively well. But
I think it's Germany or Costa Rica, honestly.
I think it was true. Like I think Kobe went to Germany. Gordon Hayward might have went to Germany. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I think so. Don't take my advice on how to fix your catastrophic knee injuries, listeners. If that's something you're here for,
just look at WebMD. Yeah, please don't take that advice.
Don't look at WebMD either. Actually, you probably feel much worse afterwards.
I know it'll link your knee to cancer. Actually, your knee injury will tell you have cancer.
Everybody has like 10 stories of looking up anything on WebMD, but it's just within 10 minutes you're like, oh, do I have this incredibly rare disease?
Literally, it's like a game almost they play. So. I think I'm going to title this podcast Dunking on Fan Bases because we got one more we have to dunk on. And it's the Orlando Magic.
Tough.
I feel bad.
Here we are in Orlando. And
yes.
We have to do this right now.
We're in Orlando. I mean, it's not even dunking on them because I think that the team just had to be freshened up. So it's kind of... Actually, I'll share my own experience. Detroit was in a similar position like this. We were battling for the 8 seed every year with Andre Drummond. And that iteration of that Pistons team and stuff like that. And then Stan Van went all in for Blake Griffin, which I love Blake Griffin. And he's the only NBA jersey I actually owned because it's the first time Detroit had a legitimate superstar. Even like, obviously they won the title in 2004, but you don't consider Rasheed Wallace or Chauncey Billups a superstar. So, going back even to the 90s, basically, or Grant Hill before he got injured. So I was really excited about Blake Griffin is the point. So Detroit went the other way and ended up being 2 more first-round exits, and now a team that's completely gutted. So I guess if you look at this iteration of the Magic, they've basically just fast-forwarding that process because they do have some young players that are interesting, at least. I mean, I think there's a mystery around Mo Bamba that's really odd. But they still have some good young players. Fultz has looked decent back there, and now... They get Otto Porter back from Chicago. They get Wendell Carter, a couple of firsts from them for Nikola Vucevic, who is their best player and is not going off to the Bulls, who's also going to be... They're sniffing around the playoff picture as well, so we can talk about them in a second. They trade with Denver, Aaron Gordon to Denver for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, I believe a second or a first. I have all their trades mixed up. A first round, sorry. And then they also ship off Evan Fournier to the Celtics for 2 second-rounders. So the Vucevic trade felt fair, actually, I felt like, for both sides. I don't know how I feel about Wendell Carter. Otto Porter's a decent swingman who I believe becomes an expiring contract next year, which I think will be valuable for them depending on what they want to do with it, or who wants to absorb that next year. The Denver one, I mean, I think it depends on your view of RJ Hampton. Gary Harris has kind of fallen off a bit. He's a great defender, obviously, but what's the use of a great defender on a really bad team, I think, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I think it's just pressing the reset button. They get some picks back. They get some at least younger players in Hampton and Carter. We were criticizing the Rockets earlier for not getting anything concrete. At least you get something a little bit concrete. You can take a look at Hampton next to Fultz. You can take a look at Carter next to, I don't know who. They're going to play at center, with Bamba.
Jonathan Isaac, once he gets back.
That's right.
All
Jonathan
these injured
Isaac.
players they have,
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, just it's a reset, but it's one that's probably needed because they always had a weird timeline. Vucevic didn't make sense. They've been playing Aaron Gordon out of position for his entire career. So, that I feel like it's fair, and I think it makes sense for all the Magic fans, and they should be happy with this. What do you think?
I am of the same mind. Like we've been, like you said, maybe we're just dunking on various fan bases and teams, but I'm not here to dunk on the Magic. I mean, maybe you dunk on some of what they've done in the past. But I think that, doing these trades right now, I think, especially with the Vucevic trade, you kind of maximize the value. You can quibble with when they traded Aaron Gordon. I have no doubt they could have gotten more for him at any point in the last 4 years when trade rumors have been swirling around him for what feels like his entire career.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say, and this is not exactly how you evaluate your own team if you're a fan or a GM, if you're looking at, like, are these people doing well? I appreciate where they traded these players to. They make sense. I'm interested, excited, and optimistic about each of those three players headed to those places. And that is obviously not the job, sending your players to better homes. But you know what? I'm glad. You didn't send someone to the Wizards. And then I'm just like, well, I won't see them until their contract's up, or the Wizards send them somewhere else. I'm actually interested in seeing how these people do. And I think you're right with the RJ Hampton piece. I'm actually super high on Markelle Fultz. I thought he looked really good with the Magic, and I'm really excited to see, because also I feel like he can man that point guard spot if he needs to, and then you have an off guard like RJ Hampton or somebody, if that's who ends up being, or whoever they draft. I feel like he's very malleable. I think he's a really good defender, and I know what you said about not what is the value of Gary Harris and the lone defender. Do you hear the lone defender in the forest, in the downtown Orlando?
At the bottom of the Eastern Conference.
At the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Do you hear them? Yeah, because then DeMar DeRozan comes and he only scores 18 points. But and the Spurs still win, of course. But no, I do think that's valuable. And also, I mean, Clifford, if they keep Clifford, I think they like him as their coach. He's big on defense, and I think that lineup can be really devastating. Obviously, they need a star. I think the definition of the Orlando Magic in the last 10 years has been like, we have a ton of great role players. Could you give us, Bradley Beal or, just anybody that we can center this around? But I like a lot of the pieces, and I definitely think that blowing it up was the right move. Whether it was 3 years late, you know what? The past is the past. We got to live in the moment, folks. It was the right move to make right now.
Hey, that one playoff win against Toronto a couple years ago when they won the title. That was really crucial.
I cannot believe how much time TJ Augustine, who hit the game winner and had like 30 points in that game, is getting on this podcast. I think his name got mentioned earlier, getting out of Milwaukee, and now he's probably starting for the Rockets, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, he has
to.
I don't know.
It's like DJ Augustine and Kelly Olynyk pick and rolls like for 30 minutes, which I'm glad that I have like schoolwork and other things to do, so that I'm not sitting there watching that. Because at that point, I think I would need to go to like NBA AA.
Literally, yeah. It's actually, that's a funny thing you mentioned with who's left on Houston's team, because I actually just started a shared franchise mode in Madden with my brother, right? And he wanted to pick the Lions, and I was like, fine, like I'll be kind and pick someone in the same range. So I settled on the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow.
That's mean. That's mean of you.
He breaks his collarbone in the first half of my first game. It was true to the form of the Cincinnati Bengals this past season. I was actually on with my friend Darty, and he's a Bengals fan, so he was talking to me. I was like, Darty, you're not going to believe this, but Joe Burrow just got injured in my first game as a Bengals. And as a Bengals fan, he's just like, this is the most accurate gameplay I've ever had. So then I trade for Gardner Minshew as a backup, whatever. And then I'm like, wait, who's the Jaguars quarterback? Because this is pre-Trevor Lawrence. So I was like, who the hell is playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars if they went 1-15, with Minshew this past year? And it turns out they had signed Colin Kaepernick, of all people, because I played them. And I'm like, who's their quarterback? Also, it's like Colin Kaepernick. I was like, what is happening? So that's just a long-winded way of like, yes, DJ Augustine is now going to put up numbers for the Houston Rockets.
So much. I don't know. Orlando and Jacksonville across the sports there, I feel like there's some parallels we can draw for the past few years, but that is... I think it was mean of you. I think you deserved that. That was karma, because your brother picked the worst possible idea, and then you were like, oh, Joe Burrow is going to be a stud in like no time. I'm going to be winning this easy.
Yep. And just destroyed. His collarbone got destroyed by Joey Bosa. So true to form. So, but to your point, the Magic are trying to tank now. They have the fourth worst record in the league. They have 3 games worth of tanking to make up from the third worst Pistons, who are tied with the Rockets as well, and Minnesota. Obviously, Cade Cunningham actually declaring today that he is entering the NBA draft with the presumptive number 1 pick from Oklahoma State. So the lottery's weird. Maybe they get lucky in the lottery, get Cade Cunningham to build around, like you mentioned. If not, I know the Mobley Center from USC is going up there, but God, I think if the Magic pick another center, I will have to like buy Sal, who's an NBA fan, a cake. I'm gonna have to buy him a cake. I'm just like, I'm sorry, like just with all the centers they've picked.
I'll chip in on that one with you, because if they just pick somebody with like long arms who can't, like, I think Mobley's like a really good, like, he's probably gonna go number 2. He's a really good prospect. I won't be too sad for him if they pick Mobley, but like if they pick anybody else with like a long wingspan and like a questionable jump shot, I think maybe like we'll sign him like a waiver, and it's like, look, you're free to change. Like, go exchange teams at the NBA store, like wherever you have to do to make this official. Like, it's totally fair if they get like the 7th pick in the lottery from the odds.
It's funny. It's funny how hardcore sports fans are like that. Like, at what point is the pain so much you can trade teams? Like, I've been giving passes, I think, for the Lions and Michigan football before, just from paying. And like, because I know my grandfather, he was a Detroit fan, then he transitioned to the Steelers, and so that's been very happy for him. So it's just funny that, because that's what like the true sports fandom is like. And other people recognize, like, yeah, we get it. Like, you can switch if you want. It's like, then the ultimate moment is like, well, no, I don't know anything else but pain. I don't know anything else but the pain and sorrow. So I haven't done my homework on the NBA draft yet. I've been focused on the NFL draft, which I mentioned in my last podcast. We'll do content with coming up. But it looks like this is a 5-man draft, is what I've heard preliminarily, with Mobley and Cunningham at the top of it. There's a couple guys, too, from the G League I know. And then I believe Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga is in the mix up there as well,
yep,
who you can catch on Saturday as well. So, Magic right now in the 4th position. They're only a game up on the Cavs, and then the Wizards and Raptors are around there. I imagine the Wizards will win 20 games with Bradley Beal to be really down in a dump there. But, as long as the Magic land that top 5, they can at least have a decent shot at that centerpiece for their franchise that they desperately need now to play alongside Jonathan. We might have to start calling him torn ACL Jonathan Isaac. And that's cruel, but like, look, man,
it's tough. It's definitely tough to see out there. I really do hope, because I think it'd be, it's entertaining for the Magic to go 40 and 42 and have a really good defense, and like people to come to Orlando and play against like a pretty solid defense and really just struggle to get that win in the end. I feel like sense of normalcy is what that would provide, and I think that's what Jonathan Isaac and Marco Fultz can immediately provide. Sans any lottery luck. With some lottery luck, maybe things start looking up, but I know it's tough to look at some lottery luck. I know you were speaking there on fandom and the perils of it. It felt like it was coming from a very personal place over there with your various Detroit fandoms.
I think last year every Detroit team finished in the bottom. I mean, the Lions didn't. They have the 7th pick, but they finished in the bottom 3 of their league. Like, the Lions now with Goff are going to be the bottom 3, but the Tigers, Red Wings, and I think the Red Wings are the bottom, and then the Pistons, obviously, like I just said, 3rd worst in the league. So, just what that means is 2030 is going to be incredible. We're going to be winning Stanley Cups and NBA championships left and right, for sure.
Cheers to that. If that starts happening, I'll be very impressed. Jeremy Grant, NBA MVP 2029.
Oh my God. Can't even handle that. So one team we mentioned there was the Bulls, obviously getting Vucevic. The Bulls right now are in 10th in the Eastern Conference. They're 3 games behind Boston. I really have a tough time thinking Boston's going to miss the postseason completely. So the Hawks, Knicks, and Heat are all within another game of that. And then the Hornets, obviously, like we said, without LaMelo, are very close. So plenty of striking distance. So Zach LaVine's been having a really good season. He's evolved into just a deadly scorer now. He used to be a all offense, no defense guy. Now he's a little bit of defense, but now truly an elite scorer on the other end of the floor. We just said they shipped out Carter. They brought in Vucevic. I really like Lauri Markkanen. I still do. That's my guy come out of the draft. I wanted the Pistons to take him so bad, whatever draft that was, and then I think that he got picked beforehand. So, I will always defend Lauri as a 4, but maybe he makes more sense next to Vucevic. Do you think this is, I guess, 2-parter. Do you think this, 1, was a good move for Chicago, and 2, do you think this raises their ceiling enough, or do you think it's just kind of like, let's just freshen this up, see if we can actually make the postseason and try to do a couple things going forward? Because Vucevic isn't an expiring. He's not coming off the books this year yet.
No, and I think that this is maybe an exercise in your ethos as like an NBA observer and like what you think is valuable, what you think is worth doing. Because I think this is valuable and this is worth doing. Are the Chicago Bulls going to win the NBA championship? Probably not. No, they are not going to. But I think this is worth doing. You have, like you said, Zach LaVine, and he's burning bright right now. He looks like a star. And, you know, he didn't have enough sitting there. They kind of struggled in terms of record this year. Things kind of flattened out for them. And picking up Vucevic, who's having a career year, I think it's not just like, oh, what can the two of them do together? It's like, okay, you're giving Zach LaVine a shot, giving him a shot to show what he's capable of. And, you know, it's interesting because they kind of need to, rubber needs to meet the road pretty quick here for them to get, I mean, they need to get themselves squarely into that play-in section, and that's probably where they're going to end up. But obviously what they hope is that this catches fire quick and they can get up to 6. And, I mean, in the East, in the span of a week, just about anything's possible. So I'm not going to doubt them on that. But no, I really think this was a good move for Chicago. I think not just short. I don't think this is a short-sighted move. I don't think this is. And they have a really talented rookie who does not get enough credit in Patrick Williams. You know, Levine, really good. I think, quite honestly, that Kobe White is probably just a 6-man, but that's fair. And they have a lot of nice pieces. I like Billy Donovan, and I think this gives you giving Zach LaVine and, quite frankly, Vucevic the chance to show what they can do. And that doesn't mean just here the next couple of months. That means next year as well, as they retool and figure it out, and they figure out a good lineup. Patrick Williams starts to grow. You know, you hear over the next 2 to 3 years. You know, you'll be able to really truly evaluate. Okay, maybe you find out in 2 years, you're like, you know what? We gave it a shot. We traded Jimmy Butler for this guy. It took a while. He burned bright. We're not going anywhere. Maybe you have to pivot after that. But this gives them a shot to figure it out. And the East is, as we said earlier, Charlotte Hornets there for East is for the taking.
Right.
Anyway, that's
right. Yeah, and I think too. I mean, to clarify for people, because I just had to remind myself of the rules themselves. The NBA now, it's the 7 seed will play the 8 seed, and the 9 seed will play the 10 seed, and then the loser of the 7-8 game will. I thought it was the 7-10-8-9, but that's not.
I thought it was as well.
This is from the NBA.com. I'm reading right now. At the conclusion of the regular season, blah 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 blah. The team with the 7th highest winning percentage in each conference will host the team with the 8th highest winning percentage in its conference in the playing game. The winner of the 7-8 game will be the 7th seed. The team with the 9th highest percentage in each conference will host the team with the 10th highest winning percentage in its conference, the 9-10 game. I love how that they named it, like in parentheses, the 9-10 game. The loser of the 7-8 game will host the winner of the 9-10 game in a playing game, and the winner of that game will be the 8th seed. So, right now, they're looking at the matchup with the Pacers. But like I said, the 4 through 10 in the East is ridiculous right now. And you could even, I mean, Toronto made a trade that's almost like a win now thing.
I think extend that out. It's 4 through 12.
Yeah, because we don't think the Cavs are going to do anything. Even though
yeah, I mean, like record-wise, they are quite literally almost the exact same as the teams that I decided to rope in there, and the Raptors and the Wizards. But no, I don't think the Cavs are.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto picking up Gary Trent and Rodney Hood for Norman Powell, so like they're not giving up either. Kept on Kyle Lowry, so who knows? So it's just gonna be very fluid. And now with we're coming up with under 25 games ish right now left, 30 games left. So it's important to remind ourselves of that right now. So it'd be Boston and Atlanta in the 8-7, and then it'd be Chicago, Indiana, then with the loser and the winner playing those two. So Chicago's in that position there, but like you said, it's all about jostling for seeding. I mean, if you can get up to 6 and avoid that, I mean, that's incredible. So, and that's even in the West too, same type of deal. Your Mavericks right now are staring at a matchup with the Spurs, who, I don't know, the Spurs I know are have the most talent, but I don't really want to play the Spurs in a one-off game. Just doesn't feel, I don't like my odds in that. So, and then they're...
No, I don't want to play any of those. And unfortunately, the Mavs are 3.5 games back from that safety net at the 6th seed there. And all those teams, all 6 of those teams are really, really freaking good. But we've been on a tear lately, so maybe we can try and catch somebody slipping out there. But and maybe, the Spurs fall out of that spot. I'd much rather play I mean, it's kind of funny to look at the Western Conference standings and say I'd rather play. I just stopped as I said it. I was like, would I rather play Golden State? Would I? I'm not certain about that. Maybe I do want to take DeMar DeRozan on.
Yep, it's true. That's true. Especially knowing you guys would have the best player on the floor there with Luka. So that's something to keep an eye on too. Right now is the bottom. And honestly, I like this because part of the appeal I think to soccer, for instance, is that I'm not sure how familiar you are, that the bottom of the league is really interesting as the season goes on because the bottom 3 teams get relegated to the second division of England. So think about it. If you're an American, you're confused. Think about like the bottom 3 teams of the MLB every year going down to AAA, and then the top three teams of AAA going up to MLB, and then the bottom 3 teams of AAA go to AA, and then the same process goes down for like 10 divisions. So in England, for instance, there's a ton of in the reverse of like the tanking, for like me, for instance, I'm rooting for Pistons to lose every game. I mean, and they're rooting for draws, rooting for everything because they're going to drop out of the league entirely. So it's a really interesting system. So my point is that I'm just down for weird kind of stuff that just gets more intrigue, because normally we'd be looking at this and be like, okay, well, there's the 3 top teams in the East, so you really want to get that 5th spot, in 6, 7. But like you said, right now, dragging it out to the extra teams, because you'd say, okay, there's a 2-game gap between Indiana and Chicago, like that's not insignificant coming up. But now it's like, okay, Toronto's still in it, Washington's still in it, Cleveland could be if they wanted to be. I don't think they want to be. And then going over to the West, same type of deal. I mean, you got Golden State, Memphis, Sacramento, New Orleans that are within striking distance. So I think it just makes it more interesting if it's a one-off game.
I think it's a no-brainer, and I think it's also, I think the last month or so of the season is going to be awesome. And then that little wrinkle of the playing game, you might think to yourself like, 7 and 8, like they're just going to get the honor of getting absolutely pummeled by whoever's there. But I challenge you to look at the Western Conference, not the East, because I think that's probably true when we're talking about the East. But look at the Western Conference. We have no idea who's going to end up in 1-2. Right now it's the Jazz and the Suns, which is hilarious. And it could be any combination of the Clippers and Lakers, any of those 4 really. And it matters who shows up in that 7 and 8 seed against those teams. And with the Lakers, with their 2 players out, they might end up in one of those 7 or 8 seeds, which would be absolute anarchy if some poor team fought all year long to get to the 1 or the 2 seed and then had to face LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Really, like, in sports, you got to put on a tough face or whatever. I wouldn't blame any player on that team or like a coach or something, man. Just like getting on Twitter and just unloading, just like being just absolutely done with it. Just like, man, you know what? This shit sucks. Like, let's just head home. I'm done with this. Like Terrence Ross while the trade deadline was going on. I am the captain now. Just like anarchy at that point. But I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Hell, I want to throw the Elam ending into a few of these playing games. I think that'd be a blast. Just mess it up.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't think the NBA would be too happy with the idea of like relegating the Timberwolves, but I like the ethos of that sentiment.
I was talking with a Timberwolves fan in my life. I didn't know I had one in my life.
You have the wide array of fans in your life here.
Apparently, I've been meeting some people. I mean, it's been this past year. It used to just be Detroit and Cleveland, and maybe occasionally the Bengals, Cincinnati Bengals. But now we're really coming down here, really spreading things out. And I was just like, they're going to be the next team to move, right? Like, they're going to Seattle. That's going to happen once they get bought by the owner. And he's like, I don't want them to. I'm like, but it's going to happen. And it's going to be so much better.
It's going to be great. I mean, unless they just expand. And it's either, like, they must, if they want their team to stay in Minnesota, they should be rooting so hard for expansion. Because that's their, like, saving grace is if the NBA just, like, picks up Seattle.
Right. Well, Seattle just got a hockey team, so, for the 32nd hockey franchise. So, I mean, my guess is, think about it. The only thing they've had that's been good on that team is Kevin Garnett. That's it. Literally.
Getting sad thinking about these fan bases. We need to stop. Did any good teams trade for somebody?
Well, actually, I was going to
think about the Timberwolves.
I was going to bring up Denver, because Denver's been on a tear recently. Nikola Jokic, here in our last kind of conversation here, has been killing it. He's now the MVP favorite, actually, with Embiid and LeBron's injury. So finally, the Joker is getting his recognition there. They're in the 5th seed right now. Like you mentioned, the top 6 of the West is very bundled, and the Lakers are in 4th, Clippers are in 3rd. So for me, you guys can go back and listen to past pods. I was all on the Lakers since like last February, going all the way up. I just didn't believe in the Clippers. I just thought LeBron AD would turn it on. And I was right. This year, I don't know how I feel. Just AD being out for a while, LeBron being out for a while. You can argue that they're going to get whatever seed, and they'll be the favorite to win again. I mean, that's fair. And that especially, maybe there's some fans by the time the postseason happens. I mean, granted, in LA, you're dealing with, I don't want to get into politics on this podcast, but we're getting into the California government then, so they might be the slower ones to reopen as opposed to somebody like Texas or even Florida, where we're hosting the next UFC pay-per-view with a full fan thing, which I tried to get tickets for, and then there was $700 for the top row. So it's going to be full. Jacksonville will be full for that. So however you feel about that, whatever. Miami Heat games will have fans in the postseason. That's 100% a fact. LA, I'm not sure. So, to me, I don't even there's so many good players, and the West is so hard to figure out because last year I was all in on the Lakers, and there's some bubble rust, and maybe it's just rust. They knock it off on there, but these injuries are starting to add up, especially the AD ones starting to add up, and you could even go backwards. The Brooklyn's still doing really well, but Kevin Durant, same thing. He's been day-to-day for 3-4 weeks now. And it might be longer than that. I might be misquoting that. So it's just kind of... There's a lot of moving pieces right now. Because you kind of made this point, so... And I don't want to stomp on your turf here, but Utah Phoenix as the 1-2 is just no disrespect, but just... Do I really...
Don't say no disrespect. That's if you have any Utah or Phoenix fans in your life, if you manage to pick one of those up, that's disrespect.
But do you really see Utah or Phoenix in the finals?
We're about to get a whole Western Conference download just to even, just because the Denver Nuggets traded for Aaron Gordon.
Yes.
I am more partial to think that Phoenix has what it takes to really play with any of those teams in the West.
Okay.
I know intellectually that the Jazz do, that the Jazz have the best record in the league and that they're really good. I don't know why I can't shake it. I'd be really tempted, when the odds came out for a series of them versus a rematch with the Nuggets, them versus any of those teams, the Nuggets, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns, I'd be real tempted if there were some good odds on the other team there to put some money on somebody else, because I have a lot of faith in Chris Paul. I really like what Phoenix has done. I don't have a lot of faith in Rudy Gobert. I do not mean any... You know what? I won't do that. I mean disrespect. He's an incredible basketball player. He's a defensive force. The game is different in the playoffs. He's still an impactful player, but he is not the same level of impactful player. He can't shut down Jokic. We saw it last year.
Yep.
He's how many defensive players of the year? Every single year, he's rightfully one of those people in this discussion, and he can't shut down Nikola Jokic. He cannot shut down Anthony Davis, and I just think that value gets a little mitigated in the playoffs against players like that, and I don't have as much faith in that. But I think that any of those other four teams, the Nuggets, the Lakers, Clippers, and Suns, are really legitimate, and you can talk me into – I don't know how I feel about the Trailblazers, to be honest, but you can talk me into it, and you can talk me into my own Mavericks making somebody's life hell, not the entire West, but you can talk me into them having a bad day against somebody. But
yeah. Well, you talked me into Phoenix, because I was going to say before there were only two teams that I could see making the conference finals out of the West. The Lakers, and the Denver Nuggets, and maybe the Suns. I'll give the Suns a half. And people are going to come at me about the Clippers. Look, go listen to my past podcast last February about the Clippers. I feel the same exact way. Paul George, Actually, I know you know who this is. This guy did better than me because he works on this on a full-time job. Ryan Russillo broke down Paul George's playoff resume and how it's literally 50-50 every single game, whether you're going to get 30 or under 10 points. Go listen to that breakdown because it's incredible. Look it up, type it in because he was on it, and it's fantastic because it confirmed for me a lot of what I watch with Paul George. Kawhi's great. Obviously, literally carried Toronto to a championship. But the Clippers, they still just don't feel right. And they made a move as well. We should say they got the great chemistry lord, Rajon Rondo. And granted, Rajon Rondo is an upgrade defensively over Lou Williams, 100%. So don't want to knock his talent. But I would be genuinely really surprised. And people say that, but what do you mean? The Clippers are so talented. Yeah, but it's about fit, I think, at some point. Like you said, the Suns fit really well together. So that's why I'm more sold on the Suns than them. And then I think the Nuggets, they picked up Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee. Those aren't necessarily the flashiest moves, but those are the type of moves you make when you're really looking, one, for the McGee part. We saw it last year when McGee was able to protect Anthony Davis a bit. Same thing with Jokic, get some more offense in the off Jokic moments. And, Michael Porter comes through, stuff like that. And I think Aaron Gordon's a really good addition, at least defensively, 100%, on the perimeter. And offensively, maybe they play him in his proper position as well. That would help. But Denver also has those pieces to figure it out. So I think Denver... I was high on Denver a couple years ago, and then obviously they fell off a bit last year. I mean, if Jokic is playing like this, they're going to be really tough to beat. And I would probably put them over the Clippers, at least in my idea. I mean, that's what I've already said. So I'm pretty high on Denver, and they've been rising up the standings. So right now they're in the 5th seed, but they could easily get to the 3rd spot, I think.
They're a team whose rise I absolutely believe. And I do think, like I said, when I said that I enjoy what the Orlando Magic did in terms of where they put their former pieces, I didn't just mean Chicago. I think Aaron Gordon, I don't know. I'm looking at an entire, all 30 teams in the NBA. I don't know if you could pick a better place for him to be playing right now. He will not be able to attempt or even think about attempting to be the center of attention. He was miscast in Orlando. He was the number 4 pick right after Joel Embiid. Like, yeah, you got to try it, I guess. If you're Orlando, like, this is our best player. Go try and be the best player. He's not meant for that. He's already looked pretty damn good cutting and flying around the court playing with that team, and it just makes sense. And it gives them a defensive weapon that they didn't have before. They're not going to be a defensive juggernaut, but in the NBA, you can't stop you unless you are prime Kawhi. You're not going to stop the best players in the league. There's only a few people on earth at any given time that can do that.
Yeah.
And it matters that you make it hard. You make it difficult. You make LeBron have to take 5 more shots to get up to that 30, 35 he's going to put up on you when he wants to. You make it tougher on Damian Lillard. You make it tougher on Jokic, which I don't even actually know if there's a blueprint to make it tougher on Jokic, because I don't know. Somebody let me know if you thought about that. I'm sure 29 NBA coaches would also be interested to hear. But you just have to make it harder. I think Aaron Gordon can help them make life harder on other teams. They're not going to be a juggernaut, like I said, but they already are an offensive juggernaut. I believe in them much more than, like you said, the Clippers. How weird is it that Kawhi Leonard is just proven it in multiple places, and then he orchestrates his way to the Clippers, and there's a lot of ho-humming and whatever before last year's playoffs, and then right now they're just like any other team where, like, I got to see it to believe it. I will not buy into this until I've seen it in the playoffs. And how weird is that to say about a team headed by Kawhi Leonard, where Paul George is your 2nd best player, which is just weird to be able to say to a team with talent like that. I'll see, when you get there, I'll believe it. And I think a lot of people have felt the same way about the Bucks in the East now that they've had a few different playoff failures. And I'm inclined to feel a little bit less that way about the Bucks, actually. But with the Clippers, I feel the same. I have the same reaction. Which, like, when you beat a team that I don't think you should beat in the playoffs, I'll start listening.
Yeah, I think it's more of a reflection on Paul George. And you absolutely just crushed it. You stole my Bucks point. I was like, it's the exact same thing you do with Giannis. Or it's the exact same thing how if the Sixers fall short this year, we're not going to focus on Joel Embiid. We're going to focus on Ben Simmons. It's that same type of deal, I think, which is really interesting. Or with Brooklyn even, you do Kevin Durant and then take a pick of if it's James Harden and Kyrie that messes up. I think it's because I don't want to piss off Toronto fans, but, like, it was really helpful that a bunch of Warriors got injured, right, in the finals. And, like, I'm not saying it's a tainted title or anything like that. Like, injuries happen, like they do. They're part of sports. Anytime, like, for instance, I'm not going to do a March Madness thing. Maybe at the end I will. But, Isaiah Livers, Michigan's best or 2nd best player, got injured. And on the pod I did a couple weeks ago, I was hoping that he would come back, and he never did. And, Grant made the Elite Eight, but would Isaiah Livers have made one of the 8 shot attempts we had at the end of the game to beat UCLA? Yeah, 100% he would have. He's that good. But, like, injuries happen. What am I supposed to say? Like, it's part of sports. So I'm not saying Toronto that it's a abbreviated or something like that or asterisk title, but, like, that's a big thing. And the NBA was very different even 2-3 years ago than it is now, because now it's all about twos, right? It's all about twos. It's Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic. It's Embiid, Simmons. And, I mean, Brooklyn is a counterexample to that with their 3 now. But then it's LeBron, AD, stuff like that. So, like, I think it's more of a reflection on Paul George than anything. So
I think that's right, and I think what you pointed out about what people smarter than us have pointed out about his playoff record is fair. However, if I'm a Clippers fan, and I'm listening to this. I know you just guarded. I think you put up 3 defensive walls against apparently like 75% of your listener base is in Toronto because you were just ready. You were like, I'm not doing it. I'm not saying, and then you went ahead and said it anyway. But no, I think if you're a Clippers fan, you go into a series and you're like, not only like is Kawhi the same physically as he was in Toronto? Question mark. Is he the same as he was early in his career? Absolutely not. But he's still an incandescent player. He can lock it down on defense when he wants to. He knows exactly where to be. He's become a better playmaker. You have one of the best players in the league. You have a decent amount of talent around the team, and you're not asking Paul George to be the guy because you have Kawhi. You are asking him to be a co-star, and I think he has. I think he has that. Has he done it yet? No. And I think sometimes we fall a little bit prey to like. Only one of these teams. The Lakers won last year. If the Lakers managed to somehow, like if somebody twisted their ankle and they lost to the Heat in 7 games, like they would have been eviscerated for the last like however many months it's been since they won the title. They would have been absolutely picked apart, and we would have just held Miami up on it. It's so results based, but I'm more partial to if you do something that kind of makes sense. Like, okay, could that have worked? Like the thing we talked about with Steven Adams earlier, like that was never going to work. That makes no sense. I will rip that move immediately.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, I guess by some miracle of nature, I'll apologize. But with the Kawhi Leonard Paul George mix, I don't think that's something that doesn't make sense. Has it worked yet? No. I think if you're a Clippers fan, you're looking at this postseason, you feel like all that confidence that I just tried to portray there. You're trying to feel that, and you head into the postseason and you see what happens. You see who you're matched up against. And, you probably feel pretty good about most of your matchups in the Western Conference, unless you have been crippled by, self-doubt as a Clippers fan for however long, which I guess is probable. But if you're feeling confident, I feel like he's an overqualified second player on the team.
Talent-wise.
Talent-wise, absolutely. He's an underqualified number 1 option. You put him as the number 1 player on a team, that team is not going to get. We've seen where that team goes. It's not a bad team. We've seen where that team goes. As a second player, he's overqualified. He's somewhere in between those two things. And the Clippers have a lot of talent around them. That team can win. That team absolutely can, but it is one of those things that we saw it blow up for reasons that did not make sense. It wasn't something where it's like, oh, that team was better than you. Quite frankly, you're probably better than the Denver Nuggets, and you got your behind handed to you in 3 straight games, and you look listless out there. Maybe that's the bubble. Maybe that's something else. I don't know. If this happens again, then yeah, all that sentiment of like, I'll believe it when I see it will turn into, I believe I won't see it, and no one will ever take them seriously again. But I'm more inclined to, with them, I'm kind of like agnostic. I'm heading in. I'm like, I'm not predicting that it's going to go well, but I also don't have a reason to assume it's going to go poorly.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of that. I don't think it's going to go well. So I'm more in the other camp, but I appreciate your
to play in the Mavericks. I'm all in on that kind of thought.
True. So quick finals prediction. Now we'll update it later on, and then we'll get out of here with more basketball watching, obviously.
Finals prediction. Just the teams, or do you want me to predict who wins as well?
Oh, you can just do the teams right now. I mean, we kind of went over the whole the East and West type thing. I'm not going to force you to pick a winner yet.
I feel like you'll see that ask me to pick a winner maybe would have cost you even more time on this podcast. I'm going to pick the Lakers out of the West. Oh, wow. Real bold move out of Sean Hinkle here. I have no reason to think that LeBron James will not come back and continue to be a cyborg. And I have no reason to think that's not going to happen. It seems like they are taking the cautious route. Anthony Davis, which is objectively the right thing. I don't know what the hell word just attempted to come out of my mouth. And hopefully in the last 15-ish games of the season, both of them can be out there and they can get back into a rhythm. I don't want to pick against them. If I had to, I'll be honest, I would have gone fancy on you and picked the Suns. So I'll pick a Suns-Lakers Western Conference Finals. How about that? That sounds fun. But I picked the Lakers. East, I don't like it. I don't like looking at it. I don't like thinking about it. But I do have to pick the Nets.
Yeah,
they just
100%.
And I wanted to pick Philadelphia right there, but
yeah,
I don't have that same confidence that Joel Embiid comes back and is the same as he was. It's nothing. I love Joel. I want more than anything for him, for Kawhi, for that matter. Not Kawhi, sorry. for KD for that matter, for all those guys to come back. And so maybe I should be picking Milwaukee, but I'm going to pick the Nets because even with just Harden and Kyrie, team is absurd. That team is absurd. The two of them have just been eviscerating people. And that's not one of those things that you look at and it's like, oh, that's old hat. That's not going to work in the playoffs. You look at that, it's like, oh, that's what the playoffs looks like. And those guys are absolutely handing it to you. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. So, I think the Nets are the obvious pick in the East. Right now. They are.
I just went chalk in a 5-minute monologue on your podcast, but I will go chalk.
Well, you made my case for me because I was going to say Lakers, Nets too. I just think the previous conversation about the Nuggets, I put them in the second tier there in the West, ready to go. And yeah, I mean Philly, Milwaukee are dangerous, but yeah, right now Brooklyn's just overpowering team. So I will say we have to keep a close eye on the Kevin Durant injury. It's been weird. He's not back yet. So
it's been weird. I'm hoping that with him and AD, and it's so weird right now to say that we have Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, LeBron James. I apologize if I'm missing somebody. Of 4 of easily the 7 best players in the NBA.
Yeah, it's weird.
We're just kind of sitting and waiting, and we're like, are they going to come back? I think hopefully with KD and AD, it's a case of we are just taking the most cautious route possible, and that those two can come back and look themselves. I really hope so because that team with Kevin Durant on it is hilarious, and I just want to see it. I like watching Kevin Durant play basketball. I'm really hoping that all 4 of them come back and look like themselves again.
Yeah, that'd be my guess is what's going to happen, and they're taking it slow. So, but we'll see in the NBA stretch run. Sean, this was a ton of fun. We'll get you back on as the stretch run comes on. If you disagree with everything we said, Sean, I know you said you wanted to write in for one of the previous podcasts you listened to. So we do have an email, theassistpod@yahoo.com. And then I don't really use the Assist social media, but yeah, you can write in emails there, and then we're going to work on getting this YouTube thing set up. So Sean, thank you again.
Thanks for having me on. Please do, shoot an email over to Zach over here. Let him know that I am, in fact, the best hair that he's had on the podcast. Maybe you, the listeners, can verify that. I don't actually know what the podcast was, but I've had a ton of fun. Thanks for having me on, man.
Of course.